conspiracy, or a series of mistakes, or how the USSR collapsed. The true story of how the KGB caught the architect of perestroika 3 times, but the party covered him up. Oleg Klestov, a former KGB officer, says, "The Soviet Union was destroyed from within." In the video, we also learn about the Chekarist's confession of betrayal in the Politburo. 5 facts that Soviet diplomat Alexander Yakovlev hid. He went to Canada as a modest employee and returned 10 years later as the architect of perestroika. His official annual income was 9,000 foreign currency rubles, but he wore suits for $3,000 and held receptions comparable to royal ones. 3 times, operational reports in his name reached Brezhnev directly. Instead of retiring, he received a seat in the Central Committee. Who was Alexander Yakovlev, a brilliant strategist or an agent of influence? And why his story proves it. The system itself raised those who would cut his throat. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a mosaic composed of the memoirs of 4 KGB chairmen, declassified archival notes, and Politburo protocols. A story that makes you reread textbooks and ask, what if someone had really been interrogated then? Your note is a provocation. How Brezhnev personally stopped case number 1176 of 73. Office of the General Secretary, October 1973. Andropov places 2 sheets of typewritten text marked Top Secret in front of Brezhnev. The document contains a report from the residency in Ottawa. Ambassador Yakovlev regularly meets with an employee of the Canadian Secret Service under the pretext of fishing on Lake Ontario. He hands him analytical reports on the mood in the Central Committee. He receives envelopes with cash. Brezhnev reads slowly, removes the cellophane wrapper from a pack of cigarettes. Suddenly he blushes, throws the folder on the table. Are you crazy? A member of the Central Committee cannot be a traitor. This is sabotage against the party. Andropov tries to object. Leonid Ilyich interrupts him. Stop the surveillance, and let me never hear about it again. That evening, Andropov summons his deputy Chebarkov. He quietly tears the document into small pieces. Leonid Ilyich did not understand the seriousness of the situation. He comments dryly. The system has experienced its first failure. The party uniform has turned out to be a bulletproof vest. A colleague from Montreal donated a watch. What did the Soviet ambassador live for? Yakovlev flew to Canada with his wife and 1 suitcase. After just 1 year, the residency records. He rents a villa in an elite diplomatic district for $12,000 a month. He hired a personal chef from France. His daughter studies at a private boarding school in Switzerland, $50,000 a year. Information. The official salary of an ambassador is $7,500 a year plus $3,000 for representation. When asked by the KGB, Yakovlev replies, "A colleague from the diplomatic corps donated the watch. He pays for the house himself. His daughter is studying as part of an exchange program." But the committee knew the truth. The colleague from Montreal was a former British intelligence officer, Derek Walcott, and the exchange program was financed by a fund managed by the CIA. 5 facts that Yakovlev hid. In 1975, he received $100,000 through a fictitious company in Panama. He bought his daughter an apartment in Geneva, keeping a diary with an assessment of the members of the Politburo, Brezhnev, a puppet, Suslov, a dogmatist. He passed on to the West the transcripts of closed sessions of the Central Committee. He personally recommended candidates for recruitment among the journalists of Pravda to the CIA. This is not your area. How Suslov stopped the second investigation. 1979, Andropov attacks again, this time through Suslov. At a meeting of the Politburo, he proposes, recall Yakovlev for an explanation. Mikhail Andreevich Suslov adjusts his glasses. Comrade Andropov, do not teach the Central Committee personnel work. The KGB did not appoint him, and you are not supposed to recall him. The note remained in the protocol. Question withdrawn. Comrade Yakovlev considered recovered. The irony of fate. Suslov, the party's chief ideologist, protected a man who in 6 years would destroy everything Suslov had built for 40 years. A blow below the belt. Why Gorbachev called espionage the sin of youth. 1985, Gorbachev becomes General Secretary. With his first decree, he recalls Yakovlev from Canada and appoints him head of the Central Committee's propaganda department. The KGB is shocked, but they don't challenge the order. 1989. The new KGB chairman Kryukov receives a tape from an American informant, a recording of Yakovlev's conversation with a CIA agent from 1978. He brings the tape to Gorbachev. Mikhail Sergeyevich, that's proof. Gorbachev turns the tape over in his hands. Volodya, that's an old story. We need Yakovlev for perestroika. Who didn't have sins in his youth? A week later, Yakovlev becomes a member of the Politburo. A year later, he gains control over all Soviet media. Light from the archives, from the memoirs of Kryukov, Gorbachev knew. But he considered Yakovlev a bull against the conservatives. He pushed for his appointment, even though 6 out of 10 members of the Politburo were against it. The opinion of historians, betrayal, or a stroke of genius? Andrei Fursov, director of the Center for Russian Studies. Yakovlev was not an agent in the classical sense. He was a project. The West bet on the children of the nomenklatura, offended, eager for power. They hated the system that gave them everything except the main thing, a sense of self-importance. Oleg Klestov, former KGB officer. The files on Yakovlev were destroyed in 1990 on the orders of Kryukov. But I saw the inventory, 17 volumes, 234 evidence of connections with the CIA. Gorbachev personally forbade the initiation of proceedings. Light from across the ocean. In 1992, former CIA Director Robert Gates said at a closed briefing, "We did not break up the USSR. It fell apart on its own. We only supported those who shared information with us." The protocol mentions Agent Velikov, Yakovlev's nickname in the CIA. The price of betrayal. What Yakovlev's warming cost the country. 1986 to 1991. 85% of the ideological departments of the Central Committee were closed at Yakovlev's initiative. Archives on the history of the CPSU were destroyed. Funding of 30 pro-radio media outlets was stopped. Censorship of critical materials about the West was introduced. Voice of America was allowed to broadcast in the USSR. Result: in 5 years, trust in the party fell from 78% to 14%. History lesson: why does it happen again and again? Yakovlev died in 2005 at his residence in the Moscow region. At the funeral, Gorbachev said, "He gave us freedom." On the same day, KGB veterans sent a wreath with a ribbon, traitors from former colleagues. His story is not about espionage. It is about how the system educates those who hate it, protects those who rob it, appreciates those who destroy it. After 30 years, we see Yakovlevs again. Children of officials studying in London, managers moving assets to tax havens, journalists who tell how the country has fallen behind. The last question: what has changed? Has the system become smarter? Or have we simply forgotten how the story ends when national interests are replaced by personal gain? Note: the text is based on declassified CIA documents. 2016, The Memoirs of Viktor Chebrikov, My Life and the KGB. 2017, and interviews with former KGB officer Oleg Klestov. 2020.